Coming up on CTV News, the budget is announced and we have an update on yesterday's major fire. Welcome to CTV News, I'm Rob Cope-Williams. The budget's been delivered and as promised there's quite a lot in it for Christchurch. Peter Townsend of the Employers Chamber of Commerce sums it all up. Peter, there's a fair bit in it for Christchurch.
Oh yes, look, this was fundamentally a budget about reducing debt and saving, but in the context of that budget, some real commitment to Christchurch. They've locked in a lot of money, billions of dollars, to assist in our earthquake recovery, and the pleasing thing from my perspective is the certainty that the government have put into their commitment. I mean, recovery is all about certainty and hope, and what we're seeing now is a government that's making a definite commitment to what they see as their liability in this earthquake recovery, and hopefully they can commit that money, we can get on with it, and we can rebuild our region just as soon as possible.
There'll be a time frame, do you think?
It'll be as soon as possible. I mean, it's really important that we get things up and running, but don't underestimate the complexity of this. We all know how complex it is, and we know that we're still picking up one broken brick and finding two broken bricks underneath it. We've got some major issues in terms of our general earthquake recovery with respect to land stability and which land is good to build on again and which isn't, and that's going to take some time to work through. But I'm pleased that the government is making the commitment and will do whatever they can in the time frames that are feasible and possible. I guess the other thing too is that it's interesting to see their intentions with regard to their energy companies and with regard to Solid Energy in particular. Of course, Solid Energy is headquartered right here in Canterbury, and I would see the partial sell down of Solid Energy opening up the opportunities for major expansion of their operations in the South Island and have a significant impact on us here in Christchurch, and probably assist to accelerate our recovery from the earthquake.
The mechanisms that will obviously have to be triggered?
Well, there's a lot that has to be triggered, but already we're starting to see through the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority that the government has the legislative authority to move on quickly, to cut through the bureaucracy. This financial commitment they've cemented in now gives them the energy, if you like, the horsepower to get on with it, and looking forward to seeing that happening without delay.
It's not just Christchurch City, there's also irrigation on the board?
Yes, of course, and we heard some announcements before the budget with respect to the government's commitment to irrigation. Really, really important for Canterbury. I mean, we are the centre of irrigation in New Zealand. We are well endowed with water. We have to work out how we're going to harvest and farm that water sustainably to the benefit of all of us, but that can have a multi-billion-dollar positive impact on our economy, and that can speed up the economic recovery of our city and our region.
What's the feedback from your members?
Well, the feedback I haven't heard from my members yet because we've just heard the budget, but I'm sure the feedback will be positive. I am absolutely stunned at the resilience of Christchurch businesses and the way they're just determined to get on with things. Those two words again, though, certainty and hope. This budget provides definite certainty for what the government perceives to be the quantum cost of the earthquake, and to commit funds to ensure that the infrastructure is re-established so we can all get on with our businesses.
Where would they have got the figure from? Because they're pretty big figures, Peter.
They're big figures. I'm not sure whether they're big enough, actually. My estimates are a little higher than the government's, and I guess that's probably beholden on them in the context of a Conservative budget to be conservative in those figures. But they do their estimates. We won't really know. I mean, the insurance companies don't know their own liabilities yet, and if the insurance companies don't know, I'm sure the government doesn't know. But they will have taken a guess. What I have seen from their performance to date, though, is that if it's necessary to support the second largest city in New Zealand to get it back up and to get it contributing in a way that it should to the New Zealand economy, the government will play its part.
I mean, it's a narrow line, isn't it? Because they were cutting everybody else as far as their spending was concerned, and yet pouring it into a city that only a very small population of New Zealand actually lives in.
Yeah, but a very important city, the second largest city in New Zealand, and a city that punches well above its weight in making an economic contribution to New Zealand. So it's absolutely fundamentally important for the government to support us because we play a vital role in the overall economy. And of course we're in a context of the biggest natural disaster ever to hit anyone in this country, and the government understands that and is responding to it, and I fully expect that to continue.
And obviously everything that you and your members and your organisations are doing, this is just going to be a wave that you can ride in on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we stole the mandate to be involved in earthquake recovery on about February the 23rd, and the government have subsequently endorsed the work that the Canterbury Employers Chamber of Commerce and the Canterbury Development Corporation are doing together, and we see what has been committed today as underpinning a lot of the good work that we've done and will continue to do.
As reported, there was a major fire in Christchurch yesterday morning. Emily Cooper spoke to Dan Cower today on the latest.
As we reported on CTV News last night, a fire engulfed a building which housed Trimble Navigation, which produces GPS technology. The fire is reported to have started around midnight. An investigation is now underway.
So we've got fire investigators still on scene with police at the moment. One of the things that we're working with is the structural engineers around what can we get access to in the building to continue with the investigation. It's a very large site, some 2,000 square metres. It sustained some real significant damage during the fire because of the intensity, and as such it's structurally unsound as a result, and so we're just working through structural engineers to work out where do we need to go to from here.
The fire is not believed to have been caused by quake damage.
As part of the investigation we'll be able to determine where the cause or origin is. At this point in time there's nothing that overly points to earthquake being the cause of the fire. That's what I'm waiting for confirmation in terms of what was the cause, where did it start, and then from there working with the building owners around what recovery process they need to do.
And it's not known how long the investigation will take.
The size and complex nature of the fire and the building, normally 1 to 2 days is what we would sort of expect. On some occasions it does take longer. 3
firefighters were taken to hospital after a floor of one of the buildings collapsed as they were battling the blaze.
Yeah, doing really well. Look, Gary was back at work last night and I'm sure that he was getting a lot of ribbing from his colleagues. Peter's resting up and recuperating well. He'll be several weeks before he's up and about running. Jeff had his surgery yesterday and that was finished around 5 o'clock, and by all counts it was a really successful operation on his knee. I'm certainly going to be meeting with him and his family later on today and just working through on that.
A new ceiling had just been installed in the lease building and the company were only 2 to 3 weeks away from using the first floor again after the quake. The Quake Crow website was also housed in the Trimble building. The website is currently out of action, but they're hoping to get their website back up and running today.
And a super haka took place in Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch and Dunedin at midday today in support of Canterbury. We went down to the CBS Arena to have a look.
We're at CBS Arena. Mark Sullivan from Ngaitahu joins me. Super haka, what's the concept, mate?
Super Shuttles came to Ngaitahu about a proposal of running a super haka process right across the country, calling on Canterburyans to rise up, but also extending to the rest of the nation. We're in need down here, we're alert, we need your support for the recovery of Christchurch.
Do you reckon the rest of New Zealand needs to know? I think they're pretty conscious, aren't they?
Look, the support from New Zealand katoa has been humbling. But this is just another part of the process, keeping it alive. We've got a huge recovery ahead of us. Let's do it together as a nation.
So what are you wanting people to do at 12:30 today?
Stand up and have a go at the haka. Right. Just rise up, Christchurch. Rise up.
Do you feel good after you've done? I remember my first 15 one, but do you feel good after you've done a haka, Mark?
Well, given the fact that the last time I did a haka I was 16, ask me after.
So it doesn't happen a lot.
It does if you're that way inclined. I've never been very much into the kapa haka. I certainly know all about it. Used to do it as a kid. But this is good. This is something to try the old skills again.
Mark, can we look at it as a bit of a curtain raiser to the telethon on Sunday?
Certainly can look at it as that. The telethon's going to be a big event. Again, it's just another example of the support that is coming in from all over the country.
And as you know, we have a marriage with the Maori channel at the moment, which they've been great.
Awesome.
Yeah. What role will you have in the telethon, do you think?
Whatever I'm told.
You haven't had your writing instructions?
I haven't had my writing instructions as yet.
So the feedback you've had is pretty good around the country for people wanting to take part in this, the super haka?
Seems to be, yes, seems to be very big.
The weather's been kind too.
Always.
You've done well, Mark.
We have. We've planned it all right down to the last.
Let's see if it works.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It will.
Coming up after the break, we speak to former San Francisco Mayor Art Agnes. Welcome back. While Christchurch City councillors are on a trip to San Francisco to learn about their rebuild, former Mayor Art Agnes is in Christchurch to share his views and ideas on what he learnt from his city's rebuild.
Former Mayor of San Francisco, Art Agnes, was in the CTV offices today, and we spoke to him about his opinion on the rebuild of Christchurch. Agnes was the Mayor of San Francisco when the Loma Prieta earthquake struck the San Francisco Bay Area of California in 1989. The 6.9 magnitude quake lasted 10 to 15 seconds, killed 63 people, and left around 12,000 people homeless. The quake caused billions of dollars in property damage, becoming one of the most expensive natural disasters in US history at the time. 1 week after the quake, President George H.W. Bush signed a $3.45 billion earthquake relief package for California. Agnes arrived in Christchurch on Tuesday, and he's already visited the eastern suburbs and will take a tour of the red zone tomorrow. Agnes says his city grew from the quake, but believes Christchurch has a long rebuild ahead of it. He says Christchurch has more extensive damage than San Francisco had, but says the rebuild must be thought out and done right.
Yes. First of all, let me say that I think, and it's my personal opinion, that the damage in Christchurch was worse than ours because of the location of your earthquake was right in the center of the city and close to the surface, which magnified the power of those tremors and caused the extraordinary damage that obviously is there today. Ours was not quite situated the same way, and so we didn't have as significant, and I don't want to minimize it as our damage was. It's nowhere near as bad as yours, and that just makes your challenge that much greater. In our case, we got a lot of help from our state, which is kind of like your provincial government, as well as from the national government, billions of dollars, so that we could begin to address the long-term planning needs for our city. And we were very careful about that because, like Christchurch, San Francisco is a historic city that values its history and its preservation of those valuable places. And we were fussy, if that's the right word, about how to do that. We took our time, and that's one of the things I'm saying to people here that I meet in leadership, to take your time, do it right, because this is a historic opportunity for Christchurch. They're going to rebuild a city that started 150 years ago, and your leadership and your citizenry have to be very deeply involved in that decision-making process.
But he thinks Christchurch has a bright future, and he praises the resilience and strength of the people of Christchurch.
I think you're going to do very well. I've been impressed with the resiliency and the energy of people who have suffered a lot because it has been an ongoing process. Again, in this comparison with San Francisco, you've had these aftershocks that have gone on for months and months. We didn't have that. Ours went on for a few weeks, but it's an ongoing thing. And so people can't say, okay, that's behind us, and let's go on to the next stage. They're still struggling with that. And I admire the kind of resiliency and the strength that I've seen manifested in people's response when I ask them questions and stuff. They haven't given up. They pick themselves up, and they're ready to start. And I think that's going to be a challenge for the leadership, both at the national level as well as the local level, who, by the way, I think have done an extraordinary job to date. The mayor, the city council, the ministers, Minister Brownlee, have done all the right things to comfort people, inform people, secure people, and get them ready for the next stage, which is the long-term recovery. And frankly, if they thought that the first response was difficult, this will be even more difficult because they're making long-term decisions for the future of this beautiful city that will be in front of them for the next 50 years. and they don't want to do it haphazardly or mistakenly.
As well as central city damage, San Francisco also suffered suburban damage, similar to Christchurch, including liquefaction issues.
So we had damage in the individual neighborhoods, house by house, where there was liquefaction and all of that. And people, those were homes that were built long before we knew about seismic upgrades and strengthening, and so they suffered the most. Our downtown buildings, which also built on landfill and those vulnerabilities, didn't budge or lose an inch, relatively speaking, because those are modern buildings with modern standards, tougher building codes that go through the liquefaction down to bedrock, so that they stood up. They shook, but we didn't even break many windows, a couple, but in these 60, 70, 80, 100-story buildings, which proves the value of modern building codes, which are an example of the kind of tests that leadership will have. Because when new builders come in, it's expensive to do these kind of safety seismic upgrades. And before the earthquake, people complained, well, it's too expensive to do this. Well, we think it's too expensive not to do it because you've seen what the after effects are. And so when it mattered in our high-rise buildings, where there were thousands of people at work when the earthquake happened, they survived. They hardly felt it because of these building codes that stood the test.
And although many Cantabrians are having issues with the Earthquake Commission, ECNOS believes the system is an excellent idea.
And it happened in some of the wealthiest parts of the city. And you have something that I'm very impressed with in New Zealand, which is very progressive, way ahead of the United States, which is this system of insurance, where everybody gets a $100,000 coverage, and that gives them an opportunity to even get more beyond that. I'm going to take that back to the United States because I think it's a very important program, and hopefully see if people can start something like that in our state, which needs it.
ECNOS will be speaking at the TEDx event this weekend.
The opportunity that I'm going to have to be speaking not only to the people of Christchurch and New Zealand, but also the leadership that will be there, and frankly the world, because it's streaming worldwide.
Canterbury University's Central Library reopened after the September quake, one day before the February earthquake, and it damaged the building further. Emily Cooper had a look at the newly reopened floors.
On Friday, the 18th of February, 4 days before the quake and 3 days before it was due to open, CTV News did a report on the reopening of the University of Canterbury's Central Library. The library opened the day before the quake and has been closed since. But now levels 1 and 2 are back open for students to use. Pro-Vice-Chancellor of Learning Resources, Susan McKnight, says there were still a number of things left to finish after the September quake.
Well, we were still putting the scaffolding up to replace the windows. We're replacing the windows with safety glass, double glazed, so that it will be more energy efficient after the windows are replaced. We had picked up all the collections. We still had a little bit of collection moves to do on the 4th floor when we opened on the 21st of February, and then it closed again on the 22nd of February. But the damage that was sustained in the second quake, the building's earthquake joints pop, which is what they're supposed to do. And there were some further cracks in the stairwells and the like. So we've taken the time now to do all the crack injection, to refix the expansion joints, the earthquake joints. We've finished the painting. We're still in the throes of finishing the carpeting, but we've still got a lot of books to pick up on the tower floors, which are progressively being handed over to us by the contractors as they finish the work as they move up the tower.
However, the library sustained further damage after the February quake.
The most significant new damage was some water pipes burst, and we damaged a couple of thousand books, and the books that were wet became mouldy and the books around them became mouldy, and because we couldn't access them, we've lost couple of thousand items out of the collection. The new shelving, though, that was put up after the earthquake in September remained upright, which was really terrific. So we didn't have the damage to the shelving systems that we had last time. The books fell off the shelves again, so we're in the throes of picking them up.
It's unknown what the damage from both the September and February quakes will cost.
We're dealing with our insurers, and the project office has been appointed to manage the Hawkins contractors who are doing all the work on the campus. So the project to remediate this building is just one of the many that Hawkins are dealing with, and I don't have an idea of the cost.
And there's still a number of things left to fix.
We've still got books to put on the shelves in the tower. We've got carpeting and some shelving systems to be erected on the 4th floor. But from the students' perspective, we've opened up the social learning spaces so anybody with a laptop can come in and power up and work. There's computers available to students, lots of open space for them to be studying in. It's warm, it's much better than sort of trying to study somewhere else. We are retrieving books from the collections, so if we've got something that somebody wants, they put a request for it, and we go and get it off the shelves if we can find it, if it's not on the pile of books on the floor. So we retrieved 800 items in the last day.
The university's other libraries opened soon after the quake and served students while the Central Library was closed.
And now here's Sasha with your weather.
Hi everyone. An anticyclone in the Tasman Sea is moving a southwesterly airflow across the South Island, bringing this fine weather to Canterbury. Highs reach 14 or 15 degrees today, a bit cooler to the west there with 14 for Greymouth. So what's in store for our Friday? It's a fine day with clear skies, cool temperatures and moderate northeasterly winds for Kaikoura tomorrow. 14 degrees is your expected high, down to freezing overnight tonight. Another cold night tonight for Hanmer, then it's a sunny and cool Friday with clear skies and a high of 13. North Canterbury sees a fine Friday with plenty of sunshine to take the edge off that chilly northeasterly breeze. 15 is your expected high for the day. Fine weather continues for Christchurch, however cool northeasterly winds are expected to keep that high from reaching any more than 15 degrees. A frosty morning, then it's a fine and sunny day in Ashburton. That sunshine will take the chill out of cool northeasterlies. 14 is your high. Light northeasterlies throughout the day for those of you in Timaru. We see mostly clear skies, but temperatures remain cool with a high of 14. Looking to other areas now, cold tonight, make sure you get out an extra blanket. And then it's sunny for most places with highs of 13, 14 or 15 degrees. Now the big question, what is the weekend looking like for us? Well, the answer is very positive. This fine spell continues. Mostly fine and sunny over both days with light northeasterly winds. That's your weather, everyone. Have a great evening.
Good to see that it's at least going to be sunny. I'm Rob Cope-Williams and that is CTV News.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.